What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Alex. Did you guys know that neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that refers to the market-oriented reforms, such as deregulation of capital markets, eliminating environmental regulations, and loosening trade barriers? Despite neoliberalist policies espousing higher rates of investment, economic growth, and job opportunity, their implementation has often led to the exploitation of communities and the destruction of their habitats, particularly those in marginalized communities across the world. No more are the consequences of implementing neoliberal policies visible than with the Yanomami indigenous people under the presidency of Jair Bolsonaro. The implementation of these policies has been disastrous for the Yanomami and has resulted in the marginalization of their community and the complete evisceration of their constitutional rights and judicial protections, posing a significant challenge to democratic ideals of democratic participation across Brazil. Therefore, addressing the negative impacts of neoliberalism on Brazil's indigenous population is crucial for promoting democracy and social justice in the country, because the capital owners will always choose their profits in the company over the rights of indigenous people. Boom, let's get into it. Throughout the video, we're going to take short breaks from my drawings because they're not very good. Let's get into it.
This beautiful Latin nation with a hot tropical climate and a wholesome Portuguese-speaking people. Oh, wait. No. Not this one. Oh, yeah, this country. Brazil. It's the big daddy of Latin America, with the largest economy and population. But did you know that the landmass that we now call Brazil has been the top dog of civilization for a while now? Even before that dude Christopher came on his big boat. Now, back before Columbus got famous for naming the wrong continent, indigenous people had been living on the landmass we call Brazil for over 15,000 years. The vast majority of them lived in traditional hunter-gatherer societies, and they organized themselves in a multitude of different ways. Today, we're going to be talking about one group of people in the northern Amazon of Brazil, known as the Yanomami, who have been living on this land for over 15,000 years. The Yanomami are a collection of hundreds of autonomous villages loosely connected by clan ties, kinship, and historical treaties, with roughly 50 to 200 people per village. For centuries prior to European arrival, the Yanomami had already tamed the jungles of the North Amazon using the Amazon River. They had developed agriculture, they were able to develop horticulture for the hunting of animals, but most crucially, the Amazon River was their main source of food, as well as their only network of trade between other indigenous communities. But the Amazon River is much more significant than just food or trade for the Yanomami, as their religious teachings say that when a person dies, a cloud is placed on the Amazon River, and the Amazon River takes them to the land of their ancestors above the clouds. Now, because of time constraints, we have to jump around 600 years of Yanomami history to when the Portuguese established contact on their territory in the 1600s. The Portuguese immediately saw the potential wealth and advantages in controlling trade networks along the Amazon River, as well as the abundance of arable land and potential mineral wealth underneath the soil of the Yanomami territory. And they were gonna get it. The Portuguese, in turn, wanting to obtain all this natural wealth, forced the encomienda system on the Yanomami people. The encomienda system was a system of forced labor and servitude on white European plantations and in white European-owned mines for the betterment of the white European settlers. Now, remember this racialized division of labor. It'll be important later. But the Portuguese were not the only ones that wanted to lawlessly extract the material wealth off the Yanomami territory. The United States sponsored a military dictatorship in Brazil from 1964 to 1985 against the democratically elected President João Goulart for talking about crazy things like indigenous self-respect and cooperation. The military dictatorship was happy to ignore any laws or regulations regarding indigenous sovereignty. This meant the shipping of thousands of ships up and down the Amazon River carrying raw materials, mining materials, and spilling oil into the Amazon River. By the year 1980, the Brazilian military junta was nearing its collapse and began to notice a peculiar amount of deaths regarding indigenous people along the Amazon, particularly the Yanomami. Their deaths were a result of water contamination caused by the continuous and unregulated shipping
of ships up and down the Amazon River and the extraction of raw materials. In 1985, the dictatorship collapsed, paving a new way of democracy in Brazil. The new courts of Brazil in 1988 ruled that indigenous communities, as long as their land was demarcated, had exclusive rights to political organization and exclusive claims to said ancestral land. This was seen as a huge victory for the Yanomami, as this solidified their right to say no to unregulated mining on their territory. However, this victory was short-lived, as on January 1st, 2019, Jair Bolsonaro became the president of Brazil, a right-wing populist who came to power riding a wave of anti-establishment sentiment and dissatisfaction in the economy by the Brazilian people. He was even stabbed at a rally once. But anywho, Bolsonaro believed that if business was allowed to run unregulated and uninterrupted in Brazil, the economy would explode with growth, foreign investment, and job opportunities. This idea is known as neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is an economic approach that favors free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending, essentially a capitalist's wet dream. But neoliberalism isn't something new to Brazil. Frankly, it's not new to Latin America. But Bolsonaro must have been sleeping in school as a child, as he did not learn the historical implications of it. Now, immediately after his election, Bolsonaro went on to do something politicians in Brazil usually don't do, and kept his electoral promises. This meant he went about financing the constructions of illegal mines on Yanomami territory in complete violation of the 1988 court ruling and the 1990 demarcation of the Yanomami territory, giving them exclusive rights to the resources of their land. The implications of this were exactly what the historical precedent have already shown us. The essential lawlessness when it comes to extractionism on the Yanomami territory led to thousands of ships being pushed up and down the Amazon River, once again contaminating the water, this time with mercury because of the refinery process. This led to hundreds of Yanomami dying because of mercury poisoning. Wait. Let's take a look at that mining system Bolsonaro wants. Now let's say, hypothetically, all of these mines are allowed to run and operate in the way Bolsonaro sees fit, far in the northern Amazon. Considering the fact that Brazil's white population disproportionately owns the largest amount of Brazil's wealth, who do we think are going to be the ones owning these mines? Secondly, since mining labor is so precarious, it's very hard, and this particular mining operation will be located so far north in the Amazon, who do we think is going to be working these mines? Exactly. This looks suspiciously like the encomienda system we talked about earlier, just in a modern form. The exploitation of the indigenous community for the betterment of the white upper classes in Brazil. With all the death and destruction surrounding the Yanomami territory caused by neoliberalism, there would naturally need to flow massive amounts of resistance. I mean, would you let someone poison your water for profit? Within this frame of resistance to neoliberalism, there are essentially two camps: those that believe resistance needs to be done through violence, and those that don't. The camp that believes violence can combat neoliberalism has resorted to the killing of illegal miners that encroach upon Yanomami territory. Some of the Yanomami people have gone so far as to call to resorting to a full-out guerrilla war against the foot soldiers of Bolsonaro's neoliberalism regime. The United Nations has even come out with a scathing report of literal shootouts between Yanomami warriors armed with bow and arrows and illegal miners armed with literal assault rifles. On top of this, the sentiment begins to grow with the Yanomami warriors that their way of life is fundamentally incompatible with industrial Brazilian society. The next frame of these Yanomami resistance fighters are those who are fighting Bolsonaro's neoliberal mining initiative by upholding their constitutional rights through civil disobedience. In late 2019, the Yanomami decided they needed to get their story out to the world to form solidarity with their cause. The autonomous village structure of the Yanomami played a key role in organizing themselves and devising a plan to contact NGOs to take their testimony and document the destruction of Bolsonaro's neoliberal campaign. Through these organizations, they were able to spread the word of their struggle, and it was picked up by much larger organizations like Greenpeace and Human Rights Watch, which gave international media attention to the Yanomami struggle in a way the violent campaign could not. With the newfound media attention, the Yanomami's struggle against neoliberalism was looked at by millions across the world. But do you think the Yanomami stopped there? Heck no.
The Yanomami took to the streets and organized strategic picket lines on routes necessary to access the Amazon's waterways, stopping the miners dead in their tracks. The Yanomami were also instrumental, along with the Maduruku indigenous people, in organizing a protest to Bolsonaro's Bill 191, legitimizing mining on all demarcated lands, again ignoring the judicial precedent of 1988. Hundreds of thousands took to the streets in Brasilia to protest the bill, and the Yanomami struggle from that day forward was followed by millions, and the destructions of neoliberalism were seen by all.
Okay, another brief break from my horrible drawings. Let's quickly compare and contrast the future that these two camps of resistance want for Brazil. And again, we'll start off with the violent camp. The violent camp is a little bit more unclear on what their future goals are for Brazil, because I feel like they're acting in a more physically primal way. You know, if someone came into your house and destroyed your water and poisoned you, your natural instinct would be to uprise and act in violence. So that's why with this group, I kind of draw a parallel with the Zapatista movement in Mexico. For those that don't know, the Zapatistas are an indigenous group in southern Mexico that's been at war with the Mexican state since 1994. The war started on the implementation of NAFTA, and the Zapatistas were very scared that NAFTA would lead to the monopolization of their land for fruit companies, foreign fruit companies. So they began a guerrilla war and essentially carved out a little part of Mexico that's completely indigenously owned. It's called the Zapatista Autonomous Zone. And I'd have to assume for some of these Yanomami warriors, that's what they think is best. I mean, besides all the bloodshed and living under siege, the indigenous people are 100% control of that land. Now, the second camp, the non-violent camp, their goals are much more clear. They're much more open about their goals. Their goals are to fundamentally uphold the 1998 Constitution of Brazil and the 1990 demarcation of Yanomami territory. Those must be respected. But within that conversation, I believe there's a much deeper conversation about what reconciliation really means for the future with the Yanomami people. Does that mean finances, infrastructure? What could that really mean? It's clear for their future, though, their future involves upholding and respecting the current laws of Brazil.
Let's ask $1 million question. With all the pain and destruction and death brought on by the neoliberal campaign under Bolsonaro, with all the protections that were supposed to be there for the Yanomami people that were not there to protect them, can the Yanomami ever trust Brazilian politics again, let alone the institutions that were supposed to safeguard them? Can the Yanomami trust electoral politics in Brazil, let alone a populist? Let's see. On January 1st, 2023, a new name but an old friend was selected as the next president of Brazil. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, most commonly known as Lula of the Workers' Party, was selected as the next president. He had served previously as the president of Brazil, but was impeached and jailed following an investigation into Operation Car Wash, the largest embezzlement of government funds in the world, with over $2 billion misappropriated. This actually propelled Bolsonaro's party forward in the election campaign. But now Lula was back preaching an end to neoliberalism and reconciliation with the indigenous. So for those of you that remember our $1 million question, let's take a look at how Lula has done. He's seized all federal funding for illegal mining operations in the Amazon, has closed multiple mining operations on Yanomami territory, and has outlawed shipping on Yanomami territory through the Amazon. He's affirmed the 1990 demarcation of the Yanomami territory. He's increased persecution and criminal penalty for illegal miners. And he's even called for Bolsonaro to be indicted on accounts of genocide against the Yanomami people for knowingly poisoning the water system through his neoliberal campaign.
As the aforementioned sections above, I hope have made evidently clear, the neoliberal ideology of prioritizing deregulation and of prioritizing market-oriented reforms have severely impacted the Yanomami people of Brazil's constitutionally protected rights to land and the demarcation of said land. The exploitation of natural resources and the destruction of their land and ways of life by the mining companies have led to social and environmental crises for the Yanomami. The Bolsonaro's regime's support for these neoliberal policies have only further exacerbated the problem by endangering the democratic and participatory structures of Brazil. Therefore, it is crucial to address the negative impacts of neoliberalism, not simply via their exploitation of land and resources, but by their serious danger when implementing the policies that they have on democratic institutions in Brazil. If Brazil's democracy is to thrive with rights and protections for their indigenous communities, it must be recognized that the profits of mining companies will always come first over democratic protections under a neoliberalist regime. That is why it must be abolished. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. All my links and cited sources will be in the description.